Good evening. I bring the Jackson Public School Board meeting, October 17, 2017, to order. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Assistant Superintendent from Area 1 will introduce our pledgee, please.
Good evening. Our guest speaker tonight is Tayshawn Pickett. Tayshawn Pickett is the daughter of Shantae and Johnny Pickett. She is the youngest sibling of 2 brothers and 1 sister. Tayshawn Pickett is a fifth grade honor student in Miss Cruz's classroom at Oak Forest Elementary School in South Jackson. Her favorite subject is math. Tayshawn is an active member of Emmanuel Baptist Church, pastored by Reverend Jesse Horton. She is also engaged in community activities such as Life to Life at New Horizon. Tayshawn also loves to play and paint in her spare time. Tayshawn's future plans includes attending Hines Community College and becoming Chief of Police.
Right.
May you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
All right, Mrs. Pickett, would you remain for a moment? We have something to present to you.
Ms. Pickett, thank you so much for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you have anyone here, parents or with you? May you point them out?
Oh, first.
My mother, my nephew, my niece.
Stand, we want to see you.
Please stand, yes. All right. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We want to thank you for leading us in the pledge, as I already stated. And I feel safe already with you being Chief of Police. On behalf of the board, on behalf of the faculty and staff and Superintendent Murray, we want to thank you again, and we look forward to many bright things for you in the future, okay? And thank you for representing the Jackson Public School in such a ambassadorious way, okay? All right, we're going to take a picture here.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Pickett. Now we're going to move on to our moment of inspiration. And Mr. Jones is going to introduce our moment of inspiration, Reverend Lewis.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Reverend Edgar Lewis. Edgar Lewis is a native of Kruger, Mississippi, in Holmes County. He is a pastor and teacher at Nazareth Missionary Baptist Church here in Jackson. Pastor Lewis attended SV Marshall High School and graduated with honors in May 2006. He became a freshman at Alcorn State University in the fall of the same year and later earned a BS in Mass Communication in May 2010. While attending Alcorn, he served as student ambassador and member of the University Disciplinary Committee, freshman class president, a member of the University Student Planning Group, and was also chaplain for the ASU Braves football team. He is an active member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Beta Rho Chapter, Itta Bena, Mississippi, Orange Black Men of Jackson, Inc., and Mississippi Association of Professionals in Corrections, MAPC. Currently, he is pursuing a master's in clinical mental health at Jackson State University. He is also an instructor and coordinator for the General Missionary Baptist State Convention of Mississippi Youth Department and is employed with the Mississippi Department of Correction. His ministry focuses on love, deliverance, and well-being. May I present Reverend Edgar Lewis.
Good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
And first, to God be the glory for this awesome opportunity. And Interim Superintendent, I hope I get it right. Dr. Murray is a friend and fraternity brother of mine, and I want to thank all of you and him for responsible, and even someone in the audience, Mr. Johnson, who's responsible for my being here tonight. I was asked to come and give words of inspiration, and I hope that I get this right. Thank you. I want to begin by saying that God, the Almighty, has the Jackson Public School District on his mind. I want you to know that nothing surprises God. I want you to know that nothing gets by God, and that he is cognizant of everything that we face. And beyond that, he has the power to control the outcome. God monitors every unforeseeable result, and he has already manufactured our ultimate destiny. He is present in every position we are presently in, and has already beat us to where we may fear tomorrow may bring us. The report is the public school system is failing, and in some instances is deemed no longer effective. But I want to offer tonight the other report, that failing is an opportunity for success. We are looking on the bright side of things, and we are mindful tonight and each and every time we come together of the truth. The truth is that Jackson Public Schools can and does meet the needs of our children. It helps to advance our children in their lives, whether they're those who are super smart or those who struggle from time to time. The truth is that Jackson Public Schools help our children to produce character, greater character, and help to hone the abilities to help them succeed. The state of Mississippi, it is their responsibility to give us the better economic resources and all other resources that we need and that you need to continue to educate our children. The truth further is that Jackson Public Schools are developing minds and young people who are competent, who are competitive, and who are courageous. The overall truth is that Jackson Public Schools can and will succeed in its mission and purpose of building a better society by equipping the young minds of today. Since God, my point at hand, has been thinking about the Jackson Public School District, and since he knows that he has planned for us and expected in, he has put a system in place. But the system at times have failed us, and at times, unfortunately, we have fallen along the way. But what is that system, you ask? The state of Mississippi has to continuously make an investment in us. It has to make an investment in our capable teachers and an investment continuously in our daring children. We want our educators to be highly trained and exceptionally qualified, and we want our children and even parents to be the best that we all can be. I will close by saying it's a tough race, and as we know, it's a political race, but it's a race worth running. I close by saying it's a race above all things that can and will be won. So when they fail us, and when we fall, if we might even, what do we do? The final question tonight, we look up to see God's face. And with that, I'm reminded of a poem that these last few seconds will allow me to share with you, if it will, attributed to Dr. D. Groberg. And my favorite, he says, whenever I start to hang my head in front of failure's face, my downward fall is broken by the memory of a race. As a children's race, young boys and young men, as they do, how I remember well, excitement sure, but also fear. It was so hard to tell. They all lined up so full of hope, each thought to win that race or tie for first, and if not that, at least to take second place. Their parents watched from off the side, each cheering for their son, and each boy hoped to show his folks that he would be the one. The whistle blew and off they flew like chariots of fire to win, to be the hero there, which was each young boy's desire. One boy in particular, whose dad was in the crowd, was running in the lead and thought my dad would be so proud. But as he speeded down the field and crossed a shallow dip, the little boy who thought he'd win lost his step and slipped. Trying hard to catch himself, his arms flew every place, and in the midst of laughter of the crowd, he fell flat on his face. As he fell, his hope fell too. He couldn't win it now. Humiliated, he just wished that he could disappear somehow. But as he fell, his dad stood up and showed his anxious face. which to the boy said so clearly, "Get up and win that race." He quickly rose, no damage done behind a bit, that's all. He ran with all his mind and might to make up for his fall. So anxious to restore himself, to catch up and to win, he rose up faster and faster his legs, but he slipped and he fell again. He wished that he had quit before, Dr. Murray, with only one disgrace. "I'm hopeless as a runner now, I shouldn't try to win the race." But through the laughing crowd he searched and found his father's face with a steady look that said, "Son, get up and win the race." So he jumped up, tried again. 10 yards he's still behind at last. If I'm to gain those yards, he thought, I've got to run now real fast. Exceeding everything he had done, he regained 8, then 10, but tried to catch the lead, slipped and fell again. Defeat. He lay there silently, a tear dropped from his eye. There's no sense in running anymore. 3 strikes and I'm out. Why try? I've lost, so what's the use? I live with my disgrace. But then he thought about his dad, who'd he soon have to face. Get up! An echo sounded low. You haven't lost it all. For all you have to do is rise each time you fall. Get up! The echo urged him on. Get up and take your place. You are not meant for failure. Get up and win the race. So he rose up once more, refusing to forfeit, and as he resolved whether to win or lose, at least he wouldn't quit. So far behind the others now, the most he'd ever been, still he gave it his all and kept running like he could win. 3 times he'd fallen, stumbling, but 3 times he rose again. Too far behind to hope to win, he still kept running until the end. They cheered another boy who crossed the line, who won first place. Head high, proud, happy, no falling, no disgrace. But when the falling youngster crossed the line in last place, the crowd gave him a greater cheer for finishing the race. And even though he came in last with his head bowed low, unproud, you would have thought he'd won the race to listen to the crowd. And his dad sadly said to him, or he sadly said to his father, Dad, I didn't do so well. To me, you won, his father said. You rose each time you fell. And now things finally seem so dark and bleak and difficult to face. The memory of that little boy helps me in my own race, and it will help us in this race. For all of life is like that race with ups and downs and all. And when depression and despair shout loudly in your face, all you have to do is rise each time you fall. And each time it looks like we're coming in last place, I'll leave you with this. Look up to your father's face. And you will hear that still, small, calm voice saying to you, each time you fall, you'll win. You'll make it to the end, but you've got to rise each time you fall. In Jackson Public Schools, we'll win this race. God bless you and thank you.
Reverend Lewis, please remain for us. We want to acknowledge you, and wow. We rise, and we will win this race. He's a great inspiration. I'd like Mr. Jones to give him some tokens of our appreciation.
Wow, Pastor Lewis, that was tremendous, and we definitely need those encouragements that you challenged us with and commissioned us with this evening. On behalf of the board, President Ms. Sims, also Interim Superintendent Dr. Murray, faculty and staff, and all that make up JPS in Jackson, Mississippi, we want to thank you for coming out this evening and sharing with us. Is there anyone here that you would like to recognize?
Yes,
Just you?
yes, sir.
Well, you're not by yourself. How is that? All right. We present you with this certificate here, as well as some pieces that will come in handy. There's an umbrella in there. It stands for the rain in the weeks coming ahead. So,
yes,
so please come back to see us, and thank you so much again.
Thank
it's
you.
always good to see you.
Thank you.
I think we'll take a photo of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Lewis. We appreciate those words. Now we'll move on to establishing a quorum. We do have all 4 of our board members is here today. Then adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Oppenheim. Ready for the vote? All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous, thank you. All right, reading and approval of minutes from October 3rd, 2017 regular board meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Oppenheim, second by Mrs. Johnson. Ready for vote, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you. All right, now we're ready for public participation.
Board members, you have 2 persons who've signed up to address you tonight. First, Ms. Janelle Hanna would like to address you regarding name change Davis Magnet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I went to the wrong place. I'm not.
That's all right, Miss Hannah.
Fine, we hope so.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
To the honorable members of the Jackson Public School District Board, the Davis PTA, along with Davis IB students, parents, and stakeholders, proceeded forward with a campaign to rename our beloved school. It was decided that we would begin the process of renaming our school to reflect a person who fully represents ideals and public stances consistent with what we want our children to believe about themselves. Jefferson Davis, although infamous in his own right, would probably not be too happy about a diverse school promoting the education of the very individuals he fought to keep enslaved being named after him. We are here this evening to provide notice to the Jackson Public School District School Board that after a very intensive process, we have collectively come to a decision to rename our school Barack Obama Magnet IB Elementary School. JPS School Board guidelines stipulate that schools and facilities should be renamed after persons of good character and prominence who have made outstanding contributions to the school system. Special consideration was given to names who had special meaning to the students, the parents, staff, and other stakeholders. As stipulated by your guidelines, a facility named to honor a person shall not be renamed except for compelling reasons. The compelling reasons have been already stated. On September 21st, 2017, a request for recommendations was presented to and solicited from parents, students, and staff during our regular PTA meeting. An email account was created for all recommendations to be submitted, along with supporting documentation and information to be considered by all involved. 8 names were finalized to be concluded on the ballot as the recommendations were submitted with accompanying supporting information that met the guidelines. The internal process for renaming our school was as follows. The election process ranged for a period of 2 weeks for students, teachers, and parents. Recommendations were submitted no later than Friday, September 29th. Parents submitted their request to this already previously mentioned email address. The assembly for the campaign was held on Wednesday, October 4th, 2017 at 12:45 during our differentiated instruction time at the school. Students from each class presented their class's choice, their candidate of choice, and then they had to provide explanations as to why. The actual election took place on Thursday, October the 5th, where parents, teachers, and students voted by paper ballot, and we did provide affidavit votes for parents who weren't able to come. Upon tally of the votes, the top 3 candidates for students and staff and parents were determined respectively. On Friday, the PTA board called a special meeting to determine the final name based on all votes cast. The process resulted in the determination of our beloved school being changed to Barack Obama Magnet IB Elementary School. As always, our goal is to positively impact and reflect our dynamic scholars and our dynamite scholars, teachers, and community partners. Please note that the cost for the actual name change is expected to be raised by the school in connection with community stakeholders, corporate sponsors, as well as any assistance the district may be able to provide financially through matching funds if available. At this point, we're asking you to please provide direction to us procedurally what would be our next steps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's public comment.
If I could just jump in and say, I know we usually don't speak after public comment, but I think this is a powerful narrative, given that I think one of the issues that came up in the audit is that the community is not engaged, and here we have an A school in our district where families and the community are absolutely engaged in moving forward this process. So hopefully we could get moving with everything else as soon as possible.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with the name.
Next, board members, Ms. Aneva Mae Pittman has signed up to address you regarding donations to Lanier High School.
It's not quite 6, so it's still good afternoon. I was taught that 6 is thereafter is good evening, but prior to that it's good afternoon. I stand before you this afternoon as a converted taxpayer, and it is to congratulate our superintendent, who has done a Herculean job. And I think that you're surprised to hear those words come out of my mouth, but I've been converted. So we have a superintendent. The thing that I was called to ask to speak to you about is that EMR and the University Hospital is donating to Lanier High School an ambulance. And it is for the purpose of our children being able to be trained on how to operate the ambulance. We do have, that was donated to us through the clinic, a mechanical man. And if you've been there, you've seen him, and they touch a button and everything, all the parts move in him. It's just amazing to see it. But now this addition from the University Hospital and the EMR of this ambulance is for our children to be able to train and know what to do in the future if they are working there to get this, to work with this ambulance. But we do have a little problem of housing it, so we are concerned about housing it at the school. But if we can't house it at the school, it's my understanding that we can house it at EM&R place, and we fighting for that ambulance to be for Lanier, because like prior, we had to fight to have the aid school there. We had to fight for it. They wanted to give it to somebody else. I graduated from Lanier in 1952, and I'm a part of the Lanier National Alumni Association. And we provide a lot of services for the children, and we put a lot of thousands and thousands of dollars in there. And we just secured some encyclopedias for the children and many, many other things that are unmentioned. I don't have a list of. So that's my reason for being here as a converted taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pittman.
That's all, board members.
All right, thank you. Now we move on, review of discipline cases.
We have no discipline cases.
All right, Reverend Dr. Murray, interim superintendent. Go ahead with your report, please.
Board members, community, it's my privilege tonight to greet you. At this time, we just have a couple of announcements tonight, but at this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Thea Faulkner, Director of Partners in Ed, to come forward to recognize a longtime supporter of the Jackson Public School District.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
I have the distinct honor tonight of recognizing Mr. Stephen James of the Allstate Insurance Agency for his unwavering support of Jackson Public Schools. Allstate was the first organization back in the 80s to adopt a school, namely Provine High School. Mr. James, who is a graduate of Murrah High School, 1400 Murrah Drive, continues his support of Provine High School in many ways. One thing that is noteworthy, he is the liaison for Provine's Promise Club, which trains student leaders to execute student safety campaigns on campus. He was also recently instrumental in JPS serving as the host agency for a recent statewide Promise Club training workshop. So he gave us an opportunity to play host to multiple schools across the state. As a result of that workshop, Forest Hill and Wingfield High School received $1,000 grants to initiate Promise Clubs at their schools. Additionally, Mr. James assisted Partners in Education to acquire a $6,000 grant from the Allstate Foundation in partnership with local Allstate agents. And I want to veer from my script for a moment, because one of the things I appreciate about Mr. James is he is a connector. He has been an amazing connector for me. Mr. James will call me often and say, Ms. Faulkner, there's an event coming up in the city, and I need you there, because there's some folks in the room that I need you to meet, and I need you to tell the story of Jackson Public Schools. I've got a ticket for you, Ms. Faulkner, just come on. And he's introduced me to agents, and then the follow-up has been, okay, okay, Ms. Faulkner, go ahead and give them a call, because we have something that we can do together. So we've had an amazing collaboration with other Allstate agents as a result of this connector, and I appreciate him so much. So we got this $6,000 grant from the Allstate Foundation, and that grant provided an opportunity for our teachers to come to the pie store and get free supplies before school started. So rather than the 2 annual visits per school year, our teachers now have 3 visits, which automatically increases the potential of 33% of what we are able to provide. He has also pledged ongoing support of this initiative with a goal of increasing the grant to $10,000 for the 2018-2019 school year. Mr. James says his business has been built on community service, hosting over 70 community events each year, predominantly in the Jackson area. I'm honored to know Mr. James. I'm honored for the partnership that he has walked alongside of this district for so many years. I'm proud to say that he is a graduate of Jackson Public Schools, which is so evident that we produce amazing citizens. So please join me in thanking Mr. James for his unwavering support of Jackson Public Schools.
Thank you so much, Mr. James. We appreciate you. I have the opportunity of working close with him on a daily basis. We appreciate you.
Good evening. It is after 6. I just wanted to thank Ms. Thea, and like she said, I am a proud supporter of JPS, Murrah High School, 1400 Murrah Drive. We got homecoming next week. That's right. But I love the district. I was born and raised here in Jackson, and just been blessed. So it's not a duty, but it's my pleasure, and I just believe in giving back. So any way that I can help. Miss Thea knows how to get me. Dr. Murray sees me a lot. I got a good buddy right there, Ricky Jones, Southern Miss. That's what we do, Southern Miss. But thank you guys. Hey, we're here to help. Any way I can help, I'm a phone call away. But I love the district. I love what you guys are doing. And it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes great partnerships. So we're here to help anytime we can. And thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mr. James, for what you've done in the past, and we continue to look forward to collaborations for the future. Thank you. All right, Dr. Murray.
I'd also just like to take moment to recognize our student reps. They're here in the room tonight. We appreciate your work and your service. They had a training earlier today, and they'll start presenting to us next month. So we thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. And you all are what this is all about, so we appreciate that. At this point, we have a brief presentation. I'm going to ask Ms. Thomas to come forward. And again, the work is continuing. We talk about a lot, but we are moving the work forward, and the academic progress of our students is extremely important. Last month, we talked about our STAR assessment, and the board charged us with making sure that we kept you all up to date on what we're doing. So we have a process where we progress monitor our students. We start out with STAR testing at the very beginning of the school year. And so we have some baseline data that we want to provide for you. Again, the goal is to see this data improve, but we have to have a baseline so that we can track the performance of our students. And this is how we determine if we're making growth and if we're moving our students in the right direction. So we have a brief presentation. We'll go over some data. We'll explain what you're seeing, and then we'll entertain any questions that you might have. Okay.
Okay. Well, great evening.
Great evening.
Members of the board, president, as well as the superintendent. Let's see. Well, I'll just talk a little bit while they get the data. In accordance with the Literacy-Based Promotion Act of 2013, the district performs a screener approved by the Mississippi Department of Education 3 times per year. So we use Renaissance Learning, which is our STAR system. The data that you will see, the first part of the table will be data from grades 1st grade through 10th grade. So you will see the overall screener participation rates as well as the percentages that the students performed. As we progress through the presentation, you will see various levels for students in grades 3 through 8. So hopefully
There we go.
Okay.
We can look back here.
So as Dr. Murray stated, this is the first screener. It is to be noted that students were screened August 14th through September 12th. So those were the first few weeks of the school year. As I stated, and I need to make note that this is the initial screener. So with the first column, that is the number of students tested. And again, those were grades 1 through 10th grade. And then the percentage of the students tested. The expectation is that 95% of our students would be tested. That is our participation rate. And that mirrors what the state expectation would be. As we know, when we are testing students, that we do get a score for our participation rates. Then we see our number at or above 40%, and that percentage at or above the 40 percentile. The 40 percentile is a national cut score that is generated from our STAR Renaissance system. So basically that notes that wherever students are around the nation in that grade level at this particular time during the school year, that is what they are in comparison of. So you see the first few schools there, and as they stroll up, you will see the remaining schools. So we'll give you a moment to look at that. In that last column, you do see yellow highlights as well as red, and then you will see green. So our expectation is that if 50% of the students are scoring at or above the 40 percentile, then of course the schools will yield positive results. The yellow is 49 to 30% of the students, and then of course the red is below the 30th percentage. So if you look at those numbers. And again, that is for grades 1 through 10, so you will see elementary, middle, and high school. You see the different areas. Again, you see the legend there that denotes the color range. If we go to the next set, and then I guess they will have questions after. So this next set of data breaks it down for grades 3 through 8, and that's because, of course, these are the students who will take the MAP state assessment. STAR correlates with our state MAP assessment. So basically you have proficiency levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, that mimics our MAP assessment. And then in that final column we have our percentage of proficiency. For level 3, if you know where you see majority of the yellow, level 3 is passing as it relates to our MAP assessment, but it does not denote proficiency. So students need to score within level 4 and level 5 in order to be proficient. Again, if you would look at those numbers, this would be for elementary and middle schools, again, grades 3 through 8. Those in red, you see more of those in green. So again, that is 50% or higher for proficiency. And then if it's below 15%, then it's notated in red. You see in the last row our district proficiency, which is at 20% at this point. Again, this is the fall. They were screened in August and September. The slides that you have seen so far have been STAR reading. There's one additional one. This one gives a breakdown of the district by 3rd through 8th grade. So again, you see the proficiency levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
And Ms. Thomas, can I
Yes.
pause right here? And what this does, this allows us to really be prescriptive in the work that we do. If you look on this chart, what jumps out at you? It jumps out at you that we have some work to do in 7th grade. So this allows us to kind of focus the dollars, focus our support in 7th grade so that we know that that's an area where we have some distinct challenges. So again, this data is not punitive. It serves to provide an instructional plan for our schools moving forward, so we know exactly where our students are.
So just as we have for reading, we have our math. This is the overall. Again, we have our participation rates as well as our cut score of the 40 percentile. Again, that's a national cut score. So it's a comparison of students around the nation at the same time, same grade level. You do note that you see more of our schools within that 50% or higher range for math. Again, those scoring below 30% are in red, if you would look at those. The next set, again, STAR proficiency for math, grades 3 through 8. That is our proficiency outlook, levels 1 through 5, as well as our proficiency percentages. So presently, 18% are performing at proficiency levels of 4 or 5. And this, again, is elementary and middle school. The next, again, gives a breakdown of district-wide 3rd through 8th grade students. Again, as Dr. Murray noted, we do see that 7th grade has our lowest percentage of students performing at levels 4 and 5. So again, that gives us an opportunity for intervention and to change our daily instructional practices. If you note, we do have 20% of our 5th grade students in that percentile range that are scoring at levels 4 and 5, as well as with 3rd grade students, 19% at this point. Again, level 3 is passing, which we have 42%, so we know that from mid-year and the end of the year, we will see more of those numbers fall into levels 4 and 5. Again, please note that this is the beginning of the year screener. As I stated, students were tested from the point of August 14th through September 12th. We're using this data to make changes on a daily basis. We are prescribing interventions targeted to the deficits. When the schools do their data reviews, they are looking at school-wide deficits as well as grade level and then individual deficits as well. We will have our next screener in January, and then we'll have our end of the year screener in April and May.
Okay. And in January, you'll have comparison data. They will show you the progress the students made from August to January.
Okay, we have some questions. I'll start with Ms. Johnson, and then we'll work forward.
Do we have comparison data for 2016?
That can be done, yes,
Okay.
if you would like that.
And then the projections, the outlooks?
Yes.
How's that done?
So STAR does mesh in with our state accountability system, and that's why we do use STAR a lot, even with our additional intervention programs. So as I stated, they do have a comparison, and so it correlates with our MAP state assessment. It aligns, it gives us a pathway of that. So that's what that proficiency outlook is.
Okay, so it gives you something to work from with students?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a statistical correlation where they can determine if a student scores this level on STAR, this is the likelihood that they will be proficient. Again, and also a few weeks ago, you all know we approved ClassWorks, which also in combination helps to close those gaps. So it's a target approach to improving the areas here. So we've not had a system that meshed in the past to close those gaps. So ClassWorks will allow us to provide that kind of support, that individualized program for every student in our bottom 25%.
My last question. So have the comparisons between reading and math always been like this? Has reading always been weaker than math?
Probably so, yes.
Historically, yes. You'll see that with our comparison data that we can provide it later, that even from probably 2014 and up.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Oppenheim.
Thank you so much. Thanks for bringing this data. First question that I just thought of, building off of Ms. Johnson's question about data from last school year, I'd also be curious about not just the data from the last school year, but in terms of how we could look at summer learning loss based on whatever because it's different to look at their last September testing versus their May testing and see if they've gone down, because I think that's a really important piece of information we need. So
even from May to September is
yeah,
what you're
for
saying,
sure.
You're going to have some regression in that summer.
Yeah, because I think that would be really helpful. I know some folks are proponents of year-round schooling that kind of helps reduce summer learning loss and is actually considered one of these best practices. So I'd be really curious in that data as well. So thank you. Then you mentioned that it's based on the national cut score. How does that align, and you may have said it, but how does that align with the state cut score that we'll get our ratings based on?
So Basically, as I talked about the national cut score, of course, that's with students around nationally. So basically what we're stating is that if 50% of our students would score at that 40th percentile, then we know that our schools are going to have greater results on the MAP assessment. I would have to do further research in gaining specifics as how that relates, but we know that if we have 50% or higher, then our schools are going to have higher labels and achievement scores.
For when we get rated by the state.
Yes.
They'll have that. Because I think it'd be really helpful to see what this would look like if this was interpreted into the state cut score.
Okay.
And then the last question, and you touched on it, you said interventions are based on this, and you said prescriptions of intervention, you mentioned ClassWorks as one. Can you give some other examples, especially in the middle schools where there's so much struggle, some other very specific interventions that we might do based on looking at these, these scores?
Well, we have
Read 180, which is our reading, one of our reading interventions, and basically Read 180 has not just a computer-based component, but a teacher-led. So there's small group. So they do various things within that 90-minute block of instruction. With Read 180, we are targeting those that are typically within either that higher percentile ranking of level 2, which was PL2, or within level 3. So we're looking at our Tier 2 students with Read 180 on the, you said the middle school level. Think Through Math, Imagine Math is also middle school level with math with the same similar makeup, as in you would have some computer-based time and then you would have teacher-led time. So they would actually look at the targeted skills as they're working with the computer, then they would note whether or not the child is progressing and then pull them off to do additional work within that particular skill of deficit. And those deal with Tier 2. Of course, with Tier 3, we're going to have our classwork. We do still use Academy of Reading and Academy of Math, but of course with Academy of Reading, you're dealing more with fluency and some of those early building skills. With math, it is a little different because you can, as you build up through the program, get on those specific skills that, and a lot of times it's foundational skills and prerequisites that the students are missing.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. As we're looking at the test, the number of students that are tested, I see at Jim Hill, and I believe in the math area, it was about 47%. Is that correct? Tested.
There was a low percentage of students tested at Jim Hill. Yes, it was 47%. You are correct.
Okay. What have y'all that information? How is that? What would you all do differently to increase that test?
Okay.
The number of students tested.
So one of the steps that we put in place, of course, there's a lot more monitoring as it relates to making certain that participation rates are higher, because as I stated, that is one component of our MAP scores and our school labels. We've asked that they're very purposeful in planning for STAR assessment, just as they would be with a state assessment. So there should be a location set aside, an instructor or academic tutor that is going to perform the actual testing or monitor the testing, as well as a set schedule for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've had conversations.
And if I can speak to that, actually, with the MacBooks, we assessed in August. Since that time, we've had IT has been in buildings, making sure that all of the MacBooks they have to all be touched. And so that work had not necessarily taken place at that time. But it's ultimately the principal's responsibility to make sure that 95%, that students are tested, 95% of the students. But again, there are some issues at the beginning of the year with technology, so they were going through a lab process. But when we screen those students in January, that percentage will be much higher.
Okay. How will they be impacted by not having that assessed?
Students can, again, at this point, we have access to be able to assess a student, every day if we chose to. So again, this was a screener that was done in August, but we will assess the students that were not and we'll still have something to compare that by. So
Okay.
that process is in place for us to be able to provide baseline data for those students and have something to compare it to.
Okay. As we looked at, as you strolled, and I was, as we were quickly looking at and putting the numbers together, I noticed a huge percentage of the students are falling in that level 2 and the level 3. Okay, what, roughly 76%. Okay, so what is your goal to move those, or what plans are you looking to move that 76% more toward the proficient, advanced, and proficient?
That's the responsibility that's all of our responsibility. So what we do is Tier 1 instruction, Tier 2, Tier 3. Our action plan for making sure that teaching and learning is taking place in classrooms. That's one way of moving. That's first. And then we have the programs that she's mentioned. When we identify a specific student that has a skills gap or that has an issue, then we provide interventions. ClassWorks, Read 180, Think Through Math, all of those one-on-one tutorials with individuals, academic tutors. So all of those are plans that will help us to kind of see growth in those students. So the goal is, again, this is baseline data. The goal is to progress monitor so that we see gains each time we take this assessment. And then that's how we determine growth. That's how you make growth. Students are at a specific level, and they should grow each time we take this assessment.
And if I may add, Mr. Jones, this is just one set of report that you have. STAR does break it down for the standards per student, per grade level, per school. So when we talk about being prescriptive in the targeted deficit areas, we do have reports that the teachers and that the students as well as the parents receive that breaks down those specific deficit areas.
Okay.
That we're able to target.
All right, thank you. Because I see where, just quick numbers, where you're looking at roughly 30% of your high schoolers have not been assessed. And that's just some quick math. Looking at the schools that had fell below that 95%. I know we're talking about growth, and within that piece, I am anxious for the board to hear how you're going to make up that ground. Because if you all, like you said, you're able to assess at any given time, but that student has not been seen this type of assessment. And for instance, 47 only tested in math at Jim Hill. How will you all be able to get those students back on task?
So, and since you keep referring to Jim Hill, I'll
just
speak
a number,
to
47%.
Speak to that. We have been conducting MTSS audits for a process standard 20.2, and that was one thing that was noted. And so what we shared with them was, even though we're outside of this window for our testing to present and to have a consolidated report for the district and for you all, that they are still to test those students. So we can go back and we can check and we can pull further reports to make certain that that has been done. So again, we are monitoring more frequently this year to make certain that those students are being tested.
Okay, great. Because as we look at this, and one of the things that I know the board is having, one of the indicators we have to look at is the results on the ACT. And as we look at students, 47% being assessed, using that number, 47%, not harping there, but how would that impact that number when we are moving forward?
Well, the 47% is the percentage of students that took a test on that specific window of time.
Right.
So I'm confused. When you say ACT, you mean?
Yeah. If the student hasn't been exposed to that time or that assessed area, I know we're working at moving the ball forward. How do we, as my colleague mentioned earlier, forecast in terms of moving the numbers in terms of ACT?
The other point to note with high schools is that we are simply testing 9th and 10th graders.
Right.
So, and basically the 9th graders, because you do have the growth component as relates to 9th grade, because
right.
they moved from 8th to 9th. So with that number, you're not looking at, 9th through 12th grade that would impact, ACT. You're looking at the 9th and 10th. Of course, they can take the ACT in 10th grade as well, in 11th grade. But it is key to note that we're looking at growth from 8th grade to 9th grade.
Right. And again, that's where my question comes in, and thank you for eloquently pointing that out. But as we begin to look at the long-term impact of those numbers, and I'm not going to belabor the point any longer because this is where the rubber meets the road at. This is what I'm interested in, as we all are, because this tells us from a forecast standpoint where we are, and this gives us a baseline for numbers to look at going forward. And if there are some laggards in there, as you stated, you all had an opportunity to do whatever assessment, to add whatever the type of intervention to move these students forward. But we want to ensure that the numbers we saw earlier from our math coaches or those interventions, the systems that we currently use to provide the intervention, I think the Kirkland group or what have you, is providing that math test bank or what have you. We want to make sure that information is being assessed, and we're seeing the movements that you all have said to us and everything. So that's where those questions are coming from. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is good information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, you didn't think I had a question, did you?
Ms. Thomas.
She's trying to wrap it up. We do appreciate these reports. I'm like Mrs. Johnson. I'd like to see where we were last year, where our baseline was, where we ended up in the spring, and then where we're starting again. Again, because you all bring to us this consultant group and this method of improving ourselves, if we could know what we're using now that we have this data, what are we going to use to improve these numbers, is what I'm listening for, Dr. Murray, that once we get this STAR data, what are we going to do to move it forward? And I think Mr. Jones is alluding to all of our students really need to be tested. That way we have a full array of knowing where every student is. And I'd like to say each parent needs to know as well, for the fact that they have an impact on that student as well, helping with increasing those areas of strength. So we need to get a whole picture and then get knowing what intervention methods we're going to use, and letting the parents know where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, so they can join with us to get a greater result for proficient.
Yeah, and parents are aware. We mentioned the STAR report, the assessment, the breakdown. So that information does go out to parents. And again, this is just one piece of information in the entire puzzle. This is not the end all. So this is one progress monitoring piece, but we have many methods of determining where our students are and tracking their growth throughout the year. But again, the board requested information, data as we generated, and so we wanted to make sure that we met the.
Thank you, because we like data, and we embrace it, so we'll know what we're looking at, and that's the only way that we can really make an assessment as to where we are and where we need to go. Mr. Oppenheim, I think, has one other comment.
Just one last question, and thank you again. So one of our greatest resources already are students, and especially our high school students who are willing to lend their time. We have some representatives here. What are some things that some of our high school students could do to help provide these interventions? I know we have teen trendsetters, but how do we think more broadly about how to also utilize high-performing high school students to also help, given that we already also have a teacher shortage and we could potentially think about grow your own kind of stuff. So how do we wrap this all together?
Yeah, well, I think that would require, some deep conversation around what that would look like. We, of course, know that peer support, peer tutoring is a very effective way of seeing students grow, but that needs to be structured. It needs to be in a very deliberate way, because it can be a waste of time if it's not done properly. So I think we leverage that in many of our buildings. We have informal processes in place where students help each other, but I think we could be more deliberate in having those kinds of those kinds of opportunities
Because
that exist for our students.
I think we would be, I know I wouldn't be surprised, but I think people would be pleasantly surprised that we'd have plenty of our high school students who'd be willing to step in and do direct tutoring with our elementary students or middle school too.
I want to add to that also. I know we have a lot of volunteers. I volunteered at Isabel, and I volunteered in reading programs. Are we encouraging our volunteers to sort of do what we want them to do rather than their own projects?
Oh, yes, yeah, of course. We took that approach a couple of years ago. What we found was that people were coming into the buildings and doing what they kind of wanted to do, not in a negative way, but they had projects that they wanted to do, and what we had to do was kind of focus that work. When we started with, Alignment Jackson some years ago, that was one of the purposes of that project, was to align the work so that everybody was working around the mission and vision of the school district. And so we've started to do that. We talk about the work that the 100 Black Men did last year. They came to us and said, what can we do to help? So we focused their tutorial programs. So we've started to do that, being very strategic in how we framed tutorials, individuals coming in, working with reading, literacy. So we have, now there are some cases where people still, attempt to do, their projects, but we try to make sure that principals understand what our expectations are for making sure that everything is focused toward making sure that student achievement is at the core of what we're doing.
Okay. Do we have anything written, any letters that we send to organizations concerning, like, for instance, obviously reading is a problem in the district, and that's for my own personal use as an organization that I belong to, and I think I can convince them to take, to sort of, to narrow our focus.
Well, we do with specific programs, like though there are some specific programs that Ms. Faulkner could probably speak to better than I could, like Tutor Made, and so we do solicit support through a structured method. But again, I think the schools, what we want them to do is, for example, if there's a specific target, if you want, I talked with a group of retired teachers earlier today, and one teacher, she asked the question, she said, do students read every day? Are they required to read out loud every day to the teacher? And I said, well, no, I don't think that's the case. She said, well, when I was a teacher, they did, and we did well. And she taught first grade through fifth grade. And so those are the types of strategies that we don't necessarily do now, but it's beneficial. So if we could have someone just to listen to a child read for 20 or 30 minutes or whatever. So those are conversations that we can have and that we will have as we work through plans to develop our students, our reading skills.
Okay, thank you.
But to do that, we need to have this kind of information. We need to know where our students are in order to move them to the next level. We cannot guess. We have to know exactly where our students are and be very deliberate in prescribing what they need so that they can do better.
All right, Dr. Murray, I have a question. Piggybacking on that, would you say at this point we have a gauge in knowing where all of our students are right now, so we can engage the community as well as interventionists to move forward?
But
we
know where our students are, and we have plans in place to move our students forward, and we'll be tracking that data through a progress monitoring approach.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Murray. Okay. Now we're moving on to information items only. Mrs. Shepherd.
Thank you, Ms. Sims, Dr. Murray, other members of the board. You have before you several sections of policies for review. Policies in the L section, Education Agency Relations. Those are just a few policies. Of particular note is the relations with parent organizations, and that policy requires parent organizations and booster clubs and what have you to secure advice and approval of the principal before planning any function that students will participate in or any function that is likely to reflect upon the district. And it also requires a little structure, such as making sure that there's a 501c3 plan and be in good standing with the IRS. And it also requires that no organization buy or contract in the name of the Board of Trustees or the district without express consent. Those policies in Section L are just for review only. If you will recall, we did collapse a lot of Section L policies in December. And then we also have the review of the remainder of Section K policies. The parent organization group policy that I just talked about is also located in Section K. It's the exact same policy. Some of those policies in Section K deal with public complaints and other matters regarding safety, such as possession of weapons on school grounds and the prohibition of smoking on school grounds. And it also talks about gifts to schools. As you know, the board has to approve gifts to schools. So those policies are just for review in keeping with the cap. And I will say that this completes the review of the board policies. The next item before you is the review of various policies, and these policies deal with graduation. The graduation policy is tweaked a little bit, and you'll probably see it again before you, because as I understand it, there's still some meetings with MDE that deal with those requirements. The other policy before you is the work study policy. When we revised a policy last month, we also learned that the work study policy might need to have some language in there that said that you had to be in good standing or have met your requirements for graduation in order to participate in the work study program, because a lot of our kids do still do that. Additionally, we have the gifted policy, and MDE pointed out at some point that there needed to be an appeal section in the gifted procedure so that parents and children can challenge acceptance there. And we also have for review, and these will be sent out for revisions. These will be sent out to the schools, the school library and media policy, and that policy will have some language in it that makes it allowable to have kind of a library help group or mobile library, so that you can share with other schools in case there are books or media that is not at a particular school. And those will be brought back before you for approval at the next meeting.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Shepherd. Are there any questions concerning the policies she's just reviewed?
The public will be noticed that those are available for public comment?
Yes.
Those last one. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, now we'll move along with Ms. Miller's already at the podium. Okay, we're going to for financial report, please.
Thank you, Ms. Sims, Dr. Murray, members of the board. I present to you an information action item, the approval of the monthly financial report for the month ended September 30th, 2017. I'd like to just note for information purposes, there was a lot of conversation over the last several weeks about $2 million in title being spent, needed to be spent. And so, if you will, what I've provided in the statement of fund balance is on page 3 of 5. If you look at down close to the bottom, Fund 2211, 2212, 2213, 2291, and 2511, that's in the year-to-date expenditure column, that shows you where we have expended those dollars. The reason you have a negative where it says ending fund balance is because this is a cash basis report, which means that we've expended the dollars and we've requested to be reimbursed, and we have yet to get our reimbursement. It always falls at the end of the next month. So I think there was a lot of conversation about whether or not we have expended our dollars, and I wanted to make sure that the board was aware that those dollars have been expended just as we said we would back several months ago. So that report is being provided for your information action.
Ms. Miller,
Yes,
may I
ma'am.
just interrupt you right there? As you said, it just kind of hit several places. I think it first started at MDE.
Yes, ma'am.
And carried through the community.
Yes, ma'am.
Based upon your position as CFO, that is a tradition that normally, can you kind of walk us through that so we understand that, if you don't mind, for a moment?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, you receive just about 2 years to expend Title I dollars. Title I SPED work in different fiscal years, just different from us. We're July to June 30. They're October 1st to September 30. So we get an allocation on average for title, a total allocation of about $15.5 to $16 million a year. Part of the expenditure process is that every school must have a school-wide plan that is approved through its site council, and there's a needs assessment done. And so the dollars are really targeted deliberately to the needs of an individual school. So you may see millions of dollars on the table because, for one, we receive a lot of money. We actually probably receive, if not the largest, but the second largest, probably the largest allocation of SPED and, of exceptional education and Title I dollars than anybody in the state. So it's not just a matter of going out and spending money just to be spending. It has to be deliberate. It has to be targeted into the school-wide plan and what's needs for children. So it may take us a little bit longer. There's also a bidding process that we have to go through. There's quotes. There's a process. So while it would be easy for me to go, or me or you or anybody else to go to a store and spend $3 million, on a couple of cars and whatever, this has to be very deliberate. And so this is not unusual for us. We follow the same guidelines that every other school district in the state of Mississippi follows. And so it just became, I think, a conversation piece for the community and for us. But we welcome those challenges because we meet them every year. And as I said before, I had no qualms whatsoever about the fact that we were going to spend them by the deadline.
Have we ever not spent those monies by the end of September as prescribed?
We've had some instances where we didn't spend. I think this year we ended up leaving $5,000, $1,100 or something on the table. For me, that's a win. Because a lot of times, and we saw this happen last week, we'll order things and maybe shipping changes, and so you have to leave some dollars on the table to take care of things like that. But we've, in my tenure since I've been here, we've not sent back hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in unspent dollars. I think probably 15 years ago or so, the district was cited for having not spent a significant amount of money, but since my tenure, we have not had that issue.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Go ahead with the rest of the report.
We have to vote on that?
It's information action.
Yep.
Information. Okay.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Oppenheim, second by Mr. Jones. All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay, now we move on, Ms. Miller, while you're there, to consent agenda item A, B, C, and D. You want to just flow right through those?
Yes, ma'am. Consent agenda items A is approval of disbursements and accounts payable and activity funds for September 23rd to October 6th. And I will note for the board that the board material did get offline, so our explanations in the far right-hand corner, far right-hand column were offline, but I do have a corrected copy for you, and I will upload that into Novus. Item B is the recommendation to dispose of surplus property, and C and D are the approval to declare the lease agreements between Rebel High Velocity, which is Walker Investment Properties, and also Diamond Wholesales in default for non-payment of rent.
So just for clarity, offline means all those things I've noted
Yes,
that were
sir.
different than, okay.
Yes, sir, they were off line.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. I think we can get them on the floor, or if I ask a question about them.
Which question you?
I was going to ask about the amounts in terms of what are they in the default for, the amounts.
Hold on. Diamond Wholesale is $2,185, and Walker Investment Properties is $6,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Can we get a motion for the floor, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Oppenheim. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Unanimous. All right, we're going to move on now to consent agenda items. As we go through A through H, are there any that we need to pull for discussion?
I have a question about A.
A needs questions. Any other?
I have questions, but they don't need to be pulled separately.
Okay. Are there any questions on any of the others? All right.
Yeah, I have questions on the
B.
others. But I don't have to vote on it separately.
Okay.
Same too. I mean, I don't have to vote on
Okay,
separately.
so do we want to take it all as a lump?
Mhm.
Okay.
Come, got a question.
Mr. McCracken?
So should we get it on the floor first? Should we move?
Wait, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second for approval. Now we'll go for questions for A, and if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit on B
And C.
and C.
Yeah. Well, I know C is different. Those are
C.
questions.
Mr. McCracken is from A and B.
Yes, yes. I noticed in this, what process did this firm, Second Moment?
Second Moment,
Yes. Okay, how were they, what exactly would they do? Kind of give a little color.
how they were secured?
That, and also what practice they would perform for us?
It'd be structural engineering.
Okay.
They've rendered services for the district on several schools throughout the bonding period, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, and they're continue to do work for the district.
Okay. Back when they did the work in the past, were there any questions in terms of how the work was performed? Are the buildings still standing? Do we have to go back and make any adjustments?
As of this date, things are in place.
Okay.
Not had any difficulty.
Okay. The other question I have too, I noticed in some of the writings there that the owner, which is the district, and the professional, which is the company, in terms of the architectural designs or the documents that there's, at least it read to me, there's a perceived deal that they may hold on to the originals, and then if we request them, they'll make them back to us. But if we are hiring them or paying them, I know architecturally there are different ways to look at that, but how does that assist us if there are some changes or we run into some problems down the road? How does that?
Well, they certainly provide the documents, the design, schematic design development, and construction documents. We do get copies of those. And if there are changes throughout the construction period, they would be deemed as built. And those are provided through the contractor, whoever does the construction work. That is the entity that note the changes on the documents.
Okay. I also noticed too that this company is in a different county, not Jackson. And I'm looking at, we're having tax dollars that are leaving. So how are we looking at local talents or local firms, and particularly in cases such as this?
Well, this particular company was familiar with these two projects, and we are fully aware of different entities within the city of Jackson, and that certainly will be utilized in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question where, with that said, how did we go about the bid process that for?
With professional services, you don't bid those.
Okay.
You pretty much provide a request for qualifications. And if it's a large project, we certainly will provide a request for qualifications in the newspaper or in different public publications. But on small projects of this nature, we look at those that have done work throughout the district and have done admirable work throughout the district.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Not on this item.
Okay. Item B?
I think he already addressed it.
Okay, so we've got item B, A and B out. Thank you, Mr. McCracken.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
I have questions on E and G.
I have a
E
question.
and G
I have a question for C.
Yeah, go ahead.
and C. Is Dr. Knox here?
He's back there in the back.
Dr. Knox, can you please step forward? How you doing? If you just give us a brief synopsis as to what these testing security plan is, and is it any different from what we have been doing in the past?
Madam President, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board, good evening. The test security plan is required by the Mississippi Department of Education for all state testing. We have to agree to comply with Standard 16, which has all of the criteria for securing testing and the criteria for who is tested. The test security plan basically is a template. Standard 16 is basically the template for the test security plan. It has been, this plan has been basically the same for the last, this will be the third year that we'll be executing this particular plan. And we anticipate not having the difficulties or the missteps this school year that we had last school year. As part of the requirement, the board has to approve this by October the 31st. That's why it's before you tonight. We have asked that our principals as well as our central office supervisors take part in training so that everyone will be aware of the requirements. And we look forward to testing 95% plus of our students during the state assessments.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Knox. The training that's going to be taking place, is that MDE providing the training, or are we providing the training to the principals? Who's conducting the training?
Well, actually for the first week or so in November, the MDE through its vendor, Questar, is going to provide training for high school test coordinators who will be administering the end of course or retest beginning the last Monday in November through about the third week or so of December. And then we will come back after that training with district training to make sure that everyone understands the test security requirements. We will reiterate what the MDE initially states, and just to make sure that we all understand what's required. We have learned that we can't take for granted that people will do what is common sense. So we're going to keep stressing common sense, but it's not going to be taken as common sense. It's going to be must do, must have. Such things as not having electronic devices, having two people present for testing, having two people with the test materials at all times, making sure that students aren't in a position that caveat can say that there is a possibility of misconduct. Those things will be stressed to a greater degree this year than we've stressed them in the past.
I appreciate those standards being put in place, and your MDE and our extra support there in training. I'm going to open the floor for other questions. Mr. Jones?
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Dr. Knox. Thank you, Ms. Sims. The question I have is, how have we worked with monitors in terms of volunteers who may want to come in and help assist with the testing?
Well, the monitors or the volunteers can assist at the school level.
Right.
As proctors.
Mm-hmm.
The school can recruit individuals, or they can volunteer. They'll be required to sign a particular statement of confidentiality and go through the training. And certainly we welcome people who would desire to do that.
Okay.
At the district level, we ask personnel from various offices to serve as district monitors. Mm-hmm. And the Office of Student Support Services provides professional development for those individuals before they are asked to visit the schools.
Okay. So has the response been good in terms of, from the volunteer side, in terms of wanting to assist with those testing dates? I guess through our PTAs or P16 councils, have we already reached out to them, or have they reached out to us, or what? How has that worked out?
Well, at this point, I can't really say, because we haven't had any testing other than the screener STAR testing at the first of the year, which was basically a small-scale amount of testing that did not require the normal test security requirements that the largest scale of testing requires.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Knox? Thank you, Dr. Knox, for what you do. We appreciate it, what we got here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is Dr. somebody representing Dr.
I asked for item E.
Item E.
And item G.
Item G. Is someone representing Dr. Merritt?
I'm here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Item E.
Yeah, so I was just following up. This is the Frog Street consultancy agreement. I was following up about getting the data as requested in terms of the pre-K assessments. Can we get that?
We can provide the data for you. Yes, you didn't receive the data.
No, I haven't received anything, and I followed up to see after receiving the responses. So,
okay. Yes, we can provide data for you we can provide data for you, yes.
Because the follow-up to that, colleagues and maybe the attorneys could kind of steer me in the right direction. I think ad nauseum, every time a consultancy comes up, we say, where's the data? But we shouldn't have to ask that. And so unless there's already a very clear policy that said it should come in front of us when the contract comes in front of us, I'd be happy to draft a policy that will specifically say when a consultancy comes in front of us, whether it's about an education thing or a facilities thing or whatever it is, that we need to see data along with, because I think there's some language someplace, but if it's not specific enough,
there is a specific
redundant
policy, Mr. Oppenheim, that requires evaluations of programs as well as consultants. I think it's pretty specific. I hadn't looked at it in a couple months.
And it says, because I think I know what you're talking about, but does it also say when it's presented to us for approval, we need to have the data in front of us and like delineating what that might mean?
I am not sure if it says that. I know that that is the expectation. I'll go back and take another look at it.
Thank you. I'll follow up on that, but I would really appreciate it to see that data. The other one I have questions on are item G, but I'll hold off if anybody else has any questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions on E?
I think the data.
Okay.
Great.
I think we're all saying we'd like to see, the information of what their past results have been and if they have been in the district in the past. What their results have been with all consultants, and including the Frog Street press group. Okay, now, are you ready for G?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, questions for G.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Moore.
Dropout prevention plan.
Yeah, thank you. This is obviously one of our most important, practices that we put in, plans that we put in place in the district for a lot of different reasons. Hey, how's it going?
Back to that.
Yeah, what's going on? Sorry, I'll turn this way. So two things. I'm hoping that it looked like there's a discrepancy between a target, and there's two plans and there are two rubrics in there. One of them says the target for truancy dropping is 6.6%. The other one is a 20% target. Right. So I'm hoping that could be adjusted.
That was a typographical error, and Dr. Merritt will take care of that upon his return.
Great, thank you. So my other question about the dropout prevention plan is to really kind of speak further as to the role of the P16 Council, which is mentioned in there. I'd be curious if conversations have already happened with the P16 Council about what their role might be in a dropout prevention plan. And then specifically what role, and this isn't to be flippant, but what role the youth court and sheriff deputies / law enforcement would actually play in preventing dropout.
Okay. As you indicated in your email request, the P16 Council is more so of a policy making, so we will lean on them for guidance as it relates to their role and how we can develop policies that would impact students attending school to decrease our truancy and ultimately to increase our graduation rate. Those conversations were taking place prior to putting it into this plan. As of today, I don't know if that meeting actually taking place, but moving forward under Dr. Merritt's leadership, I'm pretty certain that it will. As it relates to your other question concerning those other entities, Dr. Merritt indicated, and I don't think I can go any further than what he stated, which is we look to develop partnerships with those entities, the youth court as well as the sheriff department and any other local law enforcement, to develop relationships with our students, to come out and encourage and interact with our students, so that when we have encounters, it will not be from an adversarial standpoint. So I see it as bleeding over into more than just coming to school or staying in school and graduating, but it has a greater purpose, and that is relationship building with those particular entities so that it's not seen as a negative whenever you come in contact with it. The other part of that statement that Dr. Merritt provided was, although we're looking to have those partnerships, we will adhere to what the state statute says as it relates to student attendance and truancy as far as our reporting.
And I appreciate that. I do know that some progress has been made on the dropout prevention plan, because last one I think specifically said the detention center too was part of the dropout prevention plan, so at least we got that removed from the plan, since I don't know how a detention center could help keep well anyways. So I appreciate that. I would encourage with the P16 Council, because I'm not sure, obviously if there's been conversations, great, that they're involved in the early part of these processes, because they're made up of folks from all over the district and the community, and I think are a great leverage point to help with the planning far in advance. I would just be, I'm concerned when young folks, if not already under court order, are in contact with the youth court, that we're not writing it into a plan that they would be. And so I understand obviously with the truancy laws and whatnot that there could be the potential based on being absent and all that kind of stuff, but just be hesitant to think about that interaction as anything more than what it has to be, rather than proactively utilizing it that way.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. What has, or how has the previous, last year's dropout prevention plan, what was learned or gleaned from it to improve this year's plan?
One, we look back at the template that was being used, and the information, a lot of the information that was in there is now obsolete because we changed programs and changed focus and things of that nature. But we tried to be more succinct, and we wanted to align this plan with other plans that we already have in the district that's been board approved. We align it with the MTSS process because there were a lot of work that went into that we were able to glean information from to include in this dropout prevention plan so that they are aligned. So if I had to narrow it to one particular thing or something specific, it would be to align it with what we already have in place that is working to guide our work that we are trying to do to keep students in school and to increase our graduation rate.
Okay. With that, I know, if I may, Ms. Sims, I know that Dr. Lockett, working with Judge Skinner and those relationships, how has or what has that process been able to strengthen or even improve this dropout prevention plan from a community standpoint?
Well, for one, in the transition of judgeships, Judge Priesters took a more proactive approach. The sentencing of our youth now does not exceed 5 days. We get them back into school now. We don't depend on Henley Young as the school anymore. Mr. Oppenheim had a great concern with that at one time. So we're actually putting them back in to their normal schools with no more than a small window. Also, the proactive state, Sheriff Mason, Chief Vance, Chief Jones with our campus enforcement, we're working together to try to make those partners work in. There are some entities where our actual campus enforcement officers and police department is now teaming with students, just like we did with our school board students, going out, eating lunch with them, working with them, mentorship type programs. So I think we've taken that gap from the old one. Let's face it, dropout prevention at one time was just a term. It wasn't an action. I think now we're seeing more action involved in proacting instead of reacting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Lockett, while I've got you there, and Dr. Sant, how does this relate to the Rowan School that we have there? Are these dropout provisions in all high schools, or are they overlapping any in the Rowan School?
Well, REAP is that program. That's the primary. That's the focus of REAP.
Okay.
Is to bring those students who are potential dropouts, at risk to dropping out, into a focused area, giving them the opportunity to feel a part of a school. Half of their normal school day is spent with REAP. Then we transition them back to the ending of the day, back at their high school. We're going to graduate them in their school colors. We're carrying out their execution plan as far as graduation and credits toward the state of Mississippi. So we're bringing them in there now. We're giving them rewards. We're giving them promise, hope through REAP, right over on Air Street. And they come out, whatever address of their high school, that's where they come out.
How many participants do we have in that program now?
100.
100, okay.
100 from all 7 high schools. And the success rate right now looks like in 2 years we will have right at a 98 to 99% graduation rate instead of dropout rate.
That's super.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Okay. With that said, now we can. Did we get a motion on the floor for all? Yes. Now we're ready to vote. All in favor from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, please raise your hand. Thank you. Attorney Turner, I believe the Siemens people were here at some point. I'm not sure if
They had to leave.
They had to leave. Okay. Okay. We got money. Good. Okay. With that said, we can move on down to a consent agenda item personnel.
Good evening to Dr. Murray, Ms. Sims, members of the board. The administration asks for the approval of staff personnel matters as listed in board material.
All right, any questions or any items that need to be pulled?
So moved adoption.
Okay, got a motion on the floor. So moved.
Second.
second. Mr. Oppenheim moved, Ms. Johnson second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you, Ms. Lyons. All right. Are there any other business items? No business items.
I could come up with something. I'm always
hold on,
happy
let's
to.
not get excited.
I'm just playing. I mean, I'm not playing, but I won't.
Okay. Are there any items that we need to entertain for executive session?
You could come up with something.
No. We're happy. We're happy. Well, I would like to thank all of our members of our community, our staff, and our well-wishers that are in the audience. Thank you for participating with us. And I think we made a monumentous move tonight with the proposal of bringing a new name change to Davis Elementary to Barack Obama IB School, and that's a great change, so I applaud that. With that said, ladies and gentlemen,
Can I make one
you want to
quick
make
one?
a statement? Go
Please, I see one of our community college representative here, Mr. Niles Pope back there. I thank him for being here with us. I know that he will serve us well with the board, so thank you so much.
I think he's even here with the P16 Council, thus those questions about the P16. I want to say it was the confirmation of what we had already passed in terms of the name change.
The name
So,
change,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. All right. Made adjourn.
Thank you so much.
Oh, did we move to get it adjourned?
So moved.
So moved?
Second.
Everybody, please.
Everybody second? We're excited.